Hey there, Kristen Bowen from Kristen Bowen Photography here, and today I bring you 10 wedding day timeline tips. Tip number 1, figure out if you're doing a first look or not. A first look means that you're going to see the bride and groom before the ceremony, and a lot of couples are opting to do that now because that means that they can get all the pictures done before their ceremony. But some people still like to stay traditional and hide the bride from the groom before the ceremony so they can have the big reveal at the ceremony. It doesn't matter which one you choose, it's just a personal preference, but what you choose will affect the wedding day timeline a little bit. So after you know the ceremony start time and the reception start time, the next question you have to ask yourself is, are we doing a first look or not? And then you can go from there. Tip number 2, if you do choose to do a first look, do it somewhere private. So find somewhere secluded that can be just you and your photographer for you to see each other for the first time so you can have a really special moment that you'll cherish forever. Tip number 3, however long you think makeup will take, add an hour to it. The biggest thing that causes a wedding day timeline to completely fall apart is that we're running behind because hair and makeup took too long. I am not in any way knocking hair and makeup artists. They're wonderful people and they make your face look great. So this is not on them. Just usually what happens is the bride or groom throws in people at the last minute and it takes longer than they anticipated. So talk to your hair and makeup artist, and then however long you decide hair and makeup will take, add an hour to it just to be safe. Tip number 4, receiving lines take forever. If you choose to do a receiving line immediately after the ceremony, that's totally okay. It's your wedding day. Just know that they take forever. And just understand that you're going to be standing there for at least a half hour, if not an hour. I've seen some take an hour. Talking to people, smiling and shaking hands and hugging. And if it's outside, you're going to be standing in the heat, shaking hands and hugging sweaty people. So just be aware that that's what's happening and make sure to account for enough time in your wedding day timeline. So if you think you're going straight to the reception or to cocktail hour, make sure to give yourself enough time to greet all your guests. Tip number 5, don't forget about travel time. This is a silly thing that happens a lot of the time. If I'm doing a wedding and the bride or groom wants to take pictures at different locations, they'll give me an hour to take pictures at 3 different locations, not factoring in how long it takes to get from point A to point B to point C. So make sure that you know if you want to do multiple locations, that's totally fine. It's just going to take long to get everyone involved from one point to another. And if you are in a downtown urban location, even if you're only 5 minutes away, if the traffic's backed up, it's going to take a long time. So just plan accordingly. And also, we'll call this a bonus tip. If you are in an urban setting or a downtown or a busy area, be sure to check the city's local events, because if there's a concert or an event happening downtown the same day as your wedding, traffic could be really intense and it could cause a lot of delays. So just make sure that you know about that in advance and have everyone plan accordingly. Tip number 6, family pictures can take forever if people aren't organized. Now personally, my wedding day family pictures clock in at about 20 minutes, but that's because I make sure that my bride and grooms have their families super organized. I know everyone wants to go to cocktail hour, but it's important to make sure everyone knows who needs to be where and when, and that they don't leave. If everyone is right there, it doesn't necessarily take that long, but if your family is slightly chaotic, I would assume about a half hour to an hour for family photos. Tip number 7, the bridal party should be hidden a half hour before the ceremony begins. We always have that one family member who likes to show up super early for some reason, and so you'll have guests starting to arrive sometimes even earlier than a half hour before the ceremony start time. So you want to make sure that you are hidden so you don't get greeted, I guess, and so you don't reveal the big surprise of what you look like in the dress. So just make sure that whatever time the ceremony start time is, make sure all the pictures are done a half hour before so you can tuck yourselves away. Tip number 8, schedule everything. Literally, schedule lunch. Even if you are not a type A person usually, and you're not all about schedules and timelines and such, you need to be on your wedding day because there are so many moving parts. It is really easy for people to get confused and not know where to go, and that causes stress, and now we're running behind. So scheduling in everything you need to do that day is super important. This means schedule in breakfast, schedule in eating lunch, schedule in some chill time. Like if it's important to you and it's a priority, make sure it's on the schedule. If you guys are doing little gifts for one another, schedule in that time what time you will be giving them so everyone knows what's going down and no one tries to fight you on your own wedding day about no, you should be doing this. No, if it's on the schedule, then it's going to happen. So whatever you need to do, make sure that it's scheduled. And if you're not a type A person or you don't like making lists, either have your wedding photographer or coordinator do it for you or find a family member who is detail oriented and let them do that. They'll enjoy it and then everyone will have a great day. Tip number 9, talk with your photographer about how long photos will take. This will vary based on each photographer's personality and shooting style, but make sure that whoever you hire, you're in the know of how long they're expecting to have for each photo. And honestly, your wedding photographer should probably be talking to you about this too. My recommendations are for the bride and groom to have an hour of portraits for them, a half hour for the girls, like the bridal party, and then a half hour for the boys' bridal party. And then about 30 minutes to an hour for family portraits. And that's me personally. If I'm not your photographer, it might be a little bit different, but be sure to talk to your photographer about how long the formal portraits will take so everyone is on the same page and there's no miscommunicated expectations. And lastly, tip number 10, just some reception tips. Here's the order that most receptions go in, but you do not have to follow this, but this is just what most people do if you're not familiar with the wedding process. Usually it goes, bridal party is announced and they enter, then usually there is a greeting, either by the bride's father or the groom's father or the couple themselves. Someone greets the people and thanks them for coming. Then usually there's food because people want to eat. Next is the speeches or toasts. Hopefully they're on the brief side of things. And then there's cake cutting, although really you could throw cake cutting in anywhere. So don't worry about cake cutting too much. It'll happen whenever people want cake. Next is the first dance, followed by the daddy-daughter dance or the mother-son dance. A lot of people are throwing in the anniversary dance immediately following the mother-son dance. It's just kind of this new trend that I'm noticing for bride and grooms this year. So if you want to do that, it's a good way to get almost everyone out onto the floor, everyone who's been married anyway. Then usually the floor opens up to everyone. If you're doing a bouquet toss and a garter toss, that's usually about a half hour. And then it's just open dance. And then if you're doing an exit, then it's the exit. That's the flow that most people use. But it's your wedding day, so you don't have to do that flow if you don't want to. It's totally up to you. So those are my top 10 wedding day timeline tips. If you have any more questions, be sure to comment below and let me know and I'll try to answer them. Thanks for watching and I'll see you next week.